Hello once again, my lords, ladies, and lieges, and welcome back to another episode of Zodiac Reads, the series where Zodiac finds things to read on the internet, and then, well, he reads them for you. Today, once again, we are back on r/RPG horror stories, and once again, we are taking the tabletop out of this story and just talking about a roleplay game. Today, I bring for you the story of Kitty and her interesting roleplay practices. Without further ado, let's get into the story. How Not to Run a Space Opera by user NoB459. Okay, this one is less D&D and more a Discord roleplay. Either way, what happened to it was so bad that I figured it should be put here. But first things first. For almost a year now, we have been running a homebrewed roleplay set in the R-Type shoot-'em-up series universe. Our GM, whom I will call Kitty from here on, was the type to write novel-style lengthy posts filled with exposition and inner monologues, her character's actions being of secondary importance. That made it difficult to interact with them, but regardless, we all got invested in the story. At first, it was quite lenient. Kitty even allowed me to make my own faction, which then managed to score a serious win against the Bido Empire, the main antagonistic force of both the canon games and the roleplay. It started out fun, but as mentioned before, our GM made comically long novel posts. This wouldn't be so bad on its own, but she also seemed to have pretty high standards for role-playing styles. For instance, she often complained about our replies being too short, even going so far as to openly ridicule a player who used script format instead. Other times, she'd criticize us for role-playing too much on our own, because she felt left behind in her own story. Eventually, she'd leave for a couple of months, leaving us to keep playing and developing the roleplay on our own, to great success. The kicker, however, is that Kitty's return would turn everything on its head. Remember the mention of my own fleet winning against the Bido? She retconned the battle so that the Bido won instead. Afterward, she decided that my faction's victory derailed her entire story and gave us much more narrative time than she wanted us to have. Thing is, that event happened almost half a year before, and she had no issue with it back then. It felt almost like making rules up on the spot. Obviously not a good thing. When questioned about it, Kitty stated that she didn't believe the roleplay would be successful, so she didn't bother to moderate it. It only went downhill from there, probably just because we showed our ability for logical deduction. For context, Kitty gave us a list of 10 alternate dimensions we could visit throughout the story. When we figured out the whereabouts of the legendary warrior thought to be MIA and decided to free him, she added this location to the list. At the very bottom. Written in a corrupted font. We wanted to have such a valuable ally ready for the rest of the game, so we went there. What seemed like a fun bonus dungeon turned out to be an important late-game location, which meant tougher enemies. They were more challenging than anything before, sure, but still beatable with the right approach. Once we reached the boss, however, we have successfully found the lost R13A Cerberus. For those who don't know about R-Type, this was the aforementioned legendary warrior. This franchise is all about space fighters. Encased in a sort of Bido organism and having its claw-like main weapons hover around an energy tether. To put it bluntly, it was a massacre. We have been locked with this boss inside an inescapable arena with him built into a wall, which prevented us from taking him from behind. Cerberus was able to instantly parry all of our most powerful attacks, no matter how many missiles we threw or the direction they came from. In retaliation, it used an arena-sweeping beam screen which bisected one of our fighters to near death and then effortlessly popped all the shield drones deployed by another. It didn't cool down until one of the two GM player characters sacrificed herself to shield us all, in a way that, by all accounts, didn't make sense. She survived, only to get killed by a weak Vulcan shot, which nobody would have much trouble dodging. Especially not a veteran who repelled an entire alien invasion all by herself. Deaths kept piling up. Worth mentioning that Kitty was one of those GMs who note all player character deaths and put them on a public display. The fact that deaths weren't permanent doesn't help, and Kitty kept asking us to surrender and retreat. We refused, firstly because we were really determined to save Cerberus, and secondly because a surrender was also counted as a death. It got so bad that we devised a plan and blasted the boss with our strongest attacks, which we put as much effort in as she did in normal posts. They didn't deal even the slightest damage, and one of our other player characters, a redeemed Bido, was forcibly turned into an enemy without the player's explicit consent, or even knowledge. That was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. We all unanimously voiced our complaints, which Kitty derided as tantrums and personal attacks, while simultaneously calling us immature snowflakes who can't handle adversity, or any serious role-playing for that matter. It got so bad that the server's owner had to step in and try and calm the situation down. It helped nothing. Kitty declared that she overestimated us and won't be role-playing with us ever again, even going so far as to decisively end her game in the most contrived, anticlimactic way possible. The whole story turned out to be a memory record study by some higher dimensional historians. To say we were disappointed would be a massive understatement. Right now, we're making up a spiritual successor / stealth sequel to that fiasco of a roleplay, and we're enjoying it. Addendum 1. Back when that roleplay was active, Kitty had voiced her interest in participating in other players' stories as a normal player. Obviously, in the only other roleplay she joined, she continued to make her posts consist primarily of exposition dumps, going so far as to override the actual GM's, I'll call him Spike for convenience, world building. And when Spike posted the rules for his game, which included a pretty lenient case of permadeath, she freaked out and openly declared she would be a Munchkin from now on. What Kitty meant by that was throwing all personality of her characters out the window and focusing her entire, still atrociously long posts on cramming in as many actions as possible, in ways as perfectly optimal as possible. When Spike questioned her about this, she shielded herself with her immense knowledge of physics and aerial combat maneuvers. Nonetheless, he didn't accept her reply, which led to her quitting. Now she declines any and all offers to join another roleplay because we won't let her behave like that. Addendum 2. If one of Kitty's friends is to be believed, she got a track record for being banned from several other roleplay servers for making her player characters hijack the whole story before the halfway point. Reading this story was kind of a nice sense of nostalgia, I'm not gonna lie. For the many of you who don't know, I actually got a lot of my origins online by being in roleplay groups and running roleplay groups and just really enjoying roleplay in general. I still roleplay actually to this day. One of the first things I ever really did online was actually host a Warrior Cats RP group where I met a lot of my original friends and had a blast. Miss them so much, honestly. Haven't talked to them in years. Hey, Sky Splash Umbreon, if you're watching this for some godforsaken reason, miss you. Think of you often. That being said, in the most recent years, I've more kept my role-playing to one person for a little while, and we've been having a blast with it, but I have been slowly trying to itch my way into more group roleplays again. I really want to get back into it. It was really fun from what I remember. It's just very intimidating. But enough about talking about myself. Despite this not being a tabletop RPG game, this definitely kinda sounds like one of those cases where I wonder why Kitty just doesn't go write a book. Although it doesn't sound like she was controlling players' actions so heavily, the sort of need to constantly talk about exposition and do all that kind of stuff, to chastise players for not having these long enough replies, or, and also just controlling the narrative when she herself was a player. It sounds like she just has these very specific ideas of how things should happen and doesn't want to budge from it too much. What baffles me is that she intentionally scaled this fight to be unbeatable for the players, like they weren't supposed to be there yet and were supposed to build up to it, but also let it be an option to begin with, and even let them go there to begin with. Now a good game master would take that situation and just scale the fight back so the party can do whatever they want, but it won't immediately kill them either. But the other thing that makes me raise a brow a little bit is the fact that even during the fight, it sounded like she was hoping they would die or something. Obviously, that's a big assumption on my end, but it sounded like the fight was ridiculously hard. When they're talking about doing all of these big attacks all at once, matching her word count just to try and make this work, and it seemed to do nothing, it seems a little weird and a little bit like she didn't want them to win, in my opinion. But that's all speculation on my end. I would love to hear all of you guys' thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever been in roleplay groups? What are your experiences with that? And a big thank you to all my Patreons. They've been scrolling on the screen while I've been talking. Like, comment, subscribe if you like these videos and want to see more of them, and I will see you in the next video. Zodiac, out.